Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening in to episode 14, the final episode of season 1 of the Kat Myers Show. We air every Wednesday at 7 a.m. And this show, this podcast, is a legacy of a radio show called The Voice of the People. It was hosted by my late father, Dr. Kenneth Myers Sr. And the motto of his show was, I love you enough to tell you the truth, and I respect you enough to give you the facts. The theme of this show is to educate you, to entertain you, but most importantly, to empower you. And we do that through guests and through ideas. And tonight's episode is no different. We have a very special guest for you to close out our season, for you to be empowered. I can't wait for you to hear from her and to hear a little about her story and what she does. Our guest this evening is my friend, Dr. Regina Wragg Ciphrah. She is a scientist, educator, and strategist with more than 20 years of experience spanning cancer genetics research, STEM education, and policy leadership. She is the CEO of Verbalizing Visions, LLC, and has held faculty and leadership roles in higher education, state agencies, and community-based organizations. She's a Fulbright Hays Scholar and international presenter. She's widely recognized for designing innovative programs that strengthen leadership pipelines, advance workforce readiness, and bridge research, policy, and practice. When I asked her to tell me a little bit about what she's passionate about, she said that she brings expertise in transdisciplinary, including STEM education, leadership development, and policy to practice strategies, grounded in her Gullah Geechee heritage and experience as a scientist and strategist. Her perspectives shape her work in her chapter, Seen Enough in Every Mirror, where she explores how the mirrors in our lives can inform authentic leadership and personal growth. So you all have heard just a little bit about this dynamic guest, my friend Regina. Welcome to the Kat Myers Show.
Hi, and thank you for having me, Catherine.
Yes, ma'am. So for our listeners listening, can you kind of tell us, kind of what you do and how did you get into being a scientist and an educator and a leader and a policy shaper? Just give us a little taste.
Well, I just want to say that when it comes down to it, I was that little girl who asked for two things as a kid: Barbie dolls and chemistry sets. Because I was going to teach my Barbies chemistry. So I am just very blessed. I'm an educator by calling, I'm a scientist by training and passion. And I'm
Yes.
very fortunate that I get to have a classroom that's not defined by traditional four walls of a school building.
Nice. That is amazing. And so how long have you had your own business?
It's been, wow, that's a great question. It's been 12 years.
Wow.
12 years since I've started verbalizing visions, and it's been 5 since I stepped into it full time. It'll be 6 at the start of the year.
Wow. Well, I'm going to
Yes.
go ahead and tell the listeners, if you're feeling intimidated, join the club because yes, I'm a lawyer, but nothing about science, nothing about chemistry, biology, physics, none of that stuff. Like, that's scary to me. So I'm so glad.
And it's only because you didn't have me as your educator.
Okay. So it's not scary.
No, no, it's all in the approach. Like, it is a passion of mine is to help demystify the technical
Okay.
fields. A lot of the ways in which we learn it is the jargon of it all, and it's
Right.
usually not taught in context of what we live, see, our community context. So that's what I do. I demystify STEM.
I feel like if you're a scientist, you have to fit that kind of, image that you just gave, and you have to be that all the time. Like, you need to wear high
Mm.
waters, you need to have thick glasses, you need to be socially awkward, but you're also a beauty queen. Like, let's talk about that.
Well, let's just say that it was a butterfly effect, okay?
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I am proudly a nerd. If you look up that word in dictionary, it is someone
Okay.
who is like super smart. They have expertise and a drive for knowledge. And I'm a
Yes.
nerd and I love being a nerd. And I was that
Right.
kid who wore glasses and who was socially awkward and actually not that well dressed. And not because I
Okay.
didn't have a sense of style. It was just that, I've always been a thick madam. And
Okay.
so growing up, in what our culture calls poverty, right? I had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
hand-me-downs. I mean, and the hand-me-downs I had because there was no Junior Plus growing up in the 90s, y'all. Okay.
Right.
All
Right.
right. So the clothes that fit me were grown women's clothes, and so well, I was socially awkward, but at the
Okay.
same time, I had my circle of people who were my people, whether they were cousins or just friends I met along the way, because I came from a small town. So by the time we were in
Right.
elementary school, we went all through our entire matriculation process up to secondary together. So, um, on the other side of life, though, I learned that it was okay to step beyond the veil and to step into this beauty and pulchritude. And that's what this season of my life is about, actually, is to
Okay.
walk more into pulchritude and to allow that to be the draw. But once I get your attention, I'm hoping that you are introduced to the God in me.
Yes. I love that. And I know you're saying that in some ways you fit that scientist narrative, but I also think a scientist is like always in the lab and always inside, but you
Mm,
also love nature and you have a beautiful garden and you're in
yes.
touch with your spirituality, as you just kind of said, see the God in me. So to me, I think you show that you can be a scientist, but you can be a scientist plus.
Absolutely. And I think, even showing up in spaces, particularly when there's youth, and youth of color, is
Mm-hmm.
important for me because it does demystify who participates in scientists as a scientist, like who is an
Right.
engineer.
Right.
And we, from the very beginning of humanity, have been just that as a people. So, and we've always had this swag and this magic, right? So
Right.
I think it's important for people to be able to see themselves and examples of themselves so that they cannot think that it's impossible or unattainable.
What was your is it dissertation or your
Yes.
thesis? What was your topic for your PhD?
Wow. So my dissertation was in breast cancer genetics, and I studied
Wow.
why, health disparities. And Black women, as you may or may not know, tend to get what's called triple negative breast cancer, which is harder
Mm.
to treat because a lot of our therapies actually target hormone receptors. And if you're triple negative, you don't have those hormone receptors. So I looked at a
Wow.
particular pathway that produces fat proteins and inherited components of why Black women may get triple negative cancers.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay, so if someone wanted to read your dissertation, how do we get it?
If you just look at my maiden name, Rag, Wragg,
Okay.
you'll be able to
Yes.
find that dissertation.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Right.
can absolutely do that. And
Okay.
I did it in two areas. So it wasn't only the breast cancer genetics, but I also published in science education because again,
Okay.
I'm an educator by calling and I proudly walk in that. And so one of my chapters is actually on how to support teachers in doing technology rich curriculum. Because as an educator, a lot of the times you're asked to teach concepts, but you may not be able to engage kids in authentic ways so that they can understand. And so
Right.
I also published in how to support that logistically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to try my best to articulate this question.
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of listeners can relate who have to occupy professional and very sometimes sterile spaces. And I feel like as a scientist, as a PhD, like I feel like you're in like this very technical space. And sometimes we're taught that technical and professional and all this is a very narrow, it looks narrow, it speaks narrow, and I wanted to know in your career, and maybe it's changed and evolved over time, but how have you bought your femininity? How have you bought your blackness? How have you bought your gullah and your geechee to that? Or is that two separate things?
Absolutely not. And I actually
Okay.
have to give you your flowers. I don't know if you remember this conversation that we had, like maybe about 10 years ago. You and I were just talking about, communication. And I was saying that, in some ways I feel myself code switching. And it was something I learned as a kid.
Mm,
Because, growing up in a Gullah Geechee community, while we learned standard English and standard English was definitely available, like you definitely fall into your mother tongue, right?
right.
And so a lot of the times I would find myself, particularly if I'm excited or I'm angry, like really having this, like, hold up, wait a minute,
Right.
and not wanting that there because
Right.
I still come from the generation where that's called broken English.
Correct.
And it's not, right? So we know
Right.
that now. But
Right.
I remember having that conversation with you, and you were like, no, like I talk how I talk, I am how I am. And while I had, gone through the process of growing out my natural hair and, stepping into, always having been proud to be a Black woman,
Right.
but I still felt the need to edit my English,
Mm,
right? And to
mm.
not just speak freely. So you gave me permission to do that. I'll be honest, you did. And
Wow.
because you challenged my thinking, you challenged, and I'm like, wait a minute, this lady is a lawyer,
Right.
Esquire, right? And for her to say, no, like this is who I am. I'm not gonna use up my brain space trying to
Yes.
figure out how to speak to you in the way that's gonna make you comfortable. And
Right.
so then on, I do sometimes, depending on the audience. Like
Right.
if I'm teaching, like I let my students know, like,
Right.
listen, if I get excited and I get to talking fast, and y'all hear some words that you may not understand, just raise your hand because I'm excited and I'm just gonna be in flow. So yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, that makes me feel like amazing. It's
Mhm,
just easy. I can be myself all the time. But the disclaimer I want to give to the listeners is the consequences that can come with
mhm,
that. By choosing not to code switch, what consequences could come with that. In
mhm,
an interview, maybe there's a job I didn't get offered because I didn't code switch. But again, I wasn't going to code switch to keep the job. So I don't think that was the job for me. And then
mhm,
also, you may get people who associate you speaking the way you speak with you not being smart.
mhm.
And then, but I'm also not in the space of proving myself. But when I step into a courtroom, when I step into any space, I'm prepared and I'm ready.
And I think for me, because there's more to communication than just the oral tongue, right? It's your body language, it's your disposition, it's the intonations.
Right.
And I find myself showing up more authentically, more in the energy of my culture through those other 90% modes, less so
Right.
than just the English language,
Right.
because of the fact that I don't speak Gullah fluently. While I can understand it, that's not something that was really taught to me to perpetuate.
Mm-hmm.
I very much have learned to just show up as myself, show up in my energy flow. And as you just said, if this space does not accept me and my energy, is this really a space that I want to be in? And I want to create that kind of authenticity for the next generation so that they don't feel like as you just said, their opportunities are limited because they are not showing up as the majority, well, as a perceived majority, and the majority of power
Right.
wants them to show up and not necessarily as they authentically are.
Right. Right.
But at the same time,
Right.
we know that there are cultural components to how we communicate. And that's not relegated again to your skin color, or maybe not even necessarily to your age, but it could be to your geographic area, your religion, again, just your culture in general. And so to be able to show up authentically and be respected and attempted to be understood is something that I want, and so I give.
Right. I know you're a scholar in many scholarships you've won. Have
Yeah.
you had moments where it's like, am I gonna be all the way me, or am I gonna be who they want me to be?
You know what? It's very interesting, Catherine, because I have to speak authentically here. As a teacher by calling, a lot of
Hmm.
the times when I step before a room, a classroom, an audience, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. um, I'll be honest. And don't get me wrong, I have outlines, I have slides and things like that, but there's a nervousness that happens because I know that when I open my mouth, I give God permission to use me in that way. And it's not
Yes.
always like a religious context, so get me wrong. Sometimes it's just a very technical language that I'm able to illustrate in ways that I may not have ever seen on my own, but when I'm in flow, it comes
Right.
out, right? So that's another reason why, and again, I give you your flowers. I've noticed a growth in that when I allow myself to just be myself and to
Right.
say, okay, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. So now you've hit this spiritual realm, because I always hear preachers say, God, just
Mm,
let me use me. I'm just a vessel. I'm just a mouthpiece, but have your way. But I've never
mhm,
heard like a scientist or a teacher say that. And to me, it's
mhm.
just like, wow, we're all different type of vessels. It's not just on the pulpit.
Exactly, exactly.
Yes.
Whenever I'm speaking, whenever from when I was a high school teacher to the platforms I have now, like it is always my prayer before I step out there, like God allow them to see you through me, whatever it is that I am to convey, allow me to convey it, that there be no obstacles, perceived, ill perceived, but allow me to flow in the way I need to flow to get across what needs to get across.
Yes.
Like,
I feel like the core of
mm,
being able to do that is believing that you are enough. Which
mhm.
leads me to your chapter. Can you tell us about your newest publication?
So I'm going to show you guys the book. Yes, I have it in my hands. I'm so excited. I just got this last week, and so it's been on pre-order since the end of July, and so we
Wow.
finally got them in. So those who have gotten them have been letting me know they love it. But it's called "I Am Enough: Emerging into Power." It's a 12-month devotional that's actually curated by Dr. Joy McLaughlin Harris. And there are 12
Yes.
of us ladies who each tell you a little bit of our story and what we have to overcome to really step into our power. And in my chapter, I talk to you about what you and I are talking about, these perceptions, right? And I break
Yes.
down 4 types of mirrors. The first mirror is the mirror of the eye, what you look in the mirror and see, but it's that dialogue that you're having with yourself. The second mirror is the mirror of your relationships. What are the people in your circle reflecting? How are they either helping you to grow or showing you where there are opportunities for you to change and grow? The third mirror, your environment, right? Which is why my camera has this little filter on it right now, because my environment is a hot mess. But your environment tells on you. It tells you the state of, where you are in your thought space and your emotional space. If there's clutter, what are you avoiding? What might you need to clean up? And
Right.
again, it's not like tidiness is a direct reflection, but again, like start paying attention to your environment and what's going on in your physical environment, even your email box, right? Are you letting things kind of pile up and clutter, get cluttered on you? And then the
Yeah.
fourth mirror. The fourth mirror is dealing with our culture, the zeitgeist. That's everything from the groups you find yourself affiliated with, how you interact in your community, in the politics of your area, to your algorithm, right? Like what's being
Right.
marketing you, what's actually flowing based on where you are. Allow all these things to be a mirror, and if you're not liking what you see, it's an opportunity to make a different choice. Acceptance, but make a different choice, right? To where
Right.
you realize that you are enough. And that enough is, again, walking in your power to be the influence that you were designed to be, and not just be going along with the program, right?
Wow.
Not being complacent.
So I hope the listeners are hearing and just being as blown away as I am, because you have a whole PhD, you have a whole business, you have this policy work, scientist, educator, and then you're telling us about this publication, which is in a whole nother realm. So it's like you're not this nerd in a corner in a white coat that doesn't know what's going on in the world. It's like, your maiden name, your first initial and your maiden initial, we just gonna call you Renaissance woman, because that's exactly what you are.
Well, thank you, sis. I'll be honest, like someone spoke this to me, and this was someone that I absolutely respect, so I won't say their name. But they said, you're going to be a jack of all trades and a master of none.
But you're mastering
And
them all, and you know how to cook. I've had your home cooked meals. Okay, let me calm down. Go
but exactly, because when I first heard that, because I love this person and respected this person so much, like they are an eminent scholar. And so then to tell me that, I was like, well, maybe I need to try to like narrow it down, just be this thing, and be in the lab. And
ahead.
but then I had to, you know what? I am gifted.
Yes.
And I am gifted not just for me to have a big ego and to walk with a austerity. I am gifted because I'm supposed to be using my gifts to help another person, to uplift humanity,
Yes.
to not only be a better example for myself, but also to create opportunities and access for other people to walk a little bit closer to their purpose and what God designed them to be for this season now. That's why I feel like I have the gifts that I have.
Right. I mean, it's amazing, it's inspiring, it's empowering, because we've talked about so many things that you have been blessed with, that you've been
Mhm.
gifted with, that you've given back to the world. And listeners, on top of all this, she's a loving, devoted wife. So it's like, I'm not gonna like, I'm just gonna say it. It seems like you have it all, sis. You have
Wow.
it all. Like, when we check all the categories, all the
Mm.
boxes, you have it going on. And so I need the listeners to know that, because as I dive into these questions, they're not hearing answers from just anybody, but you're hearing it from Dr. Regina Wragg Ciphrah.
Well,
And
thank
y'all
you.
didn't have to pay. Y'all should be paying for this. I'm just going to say that. All right. I'm going to start you off with the first question that I ask all my guests.
When I was a little girl, I have memories from being a baby, y'all. But I remember this moment where my mom had picked out my hair, and we had one of those 80s household. It was one of those sliding closet doors, and she sat me there, and I remember looking at my hair and going, "Huh," always seen a spark in my eye. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever
Yeah,
seen that light in your eye, and it just
I
kind of like
have.
open up your heart?
Yeah.
Um, and I had my grand aunt. Her name was Albertha Green. Loved her to life. She was one of those women. Her and my great grandmother. I was busting on my great grandmother. They had like the powders and the perfumes, and so I always felt like there was an adornment thing going on. But then something happened. Something happened between me getting self conscious when I got into like public school, and
Mm.
again, the image, like the MTV raps and MTV, BET After Dark, that you shouldn't have been watching at that age, but all those things. began to put an image out there, like even the Jet magazine, the Ebony magazine, like, all those things put an image out there of what the ideal woman's shape and form was, and I wasn't
That's
that.
right.
And so again, like I said, growing up with the hand-me-downs and things like that, I began to not like what I saw in the mirror. But
Yeah.
then fast forward, I would say it was probably not until I became an educator. When I had my first classroom at the age, I was 23 years old. And there was something freeing about being in that space. But then it was also this thing that I couldn't carry the burden of not liking myself and calling myself being an example, a mentor, because in that space, you're more than just the curriculum if you're
Right.
walking in your calling.
Right.
So it was there that I began to let that go, and because of the love that I was giving to the kids and how it was being magnified back at me, it just started from there, y'all. And I began to see myself a lot more clear and beyond the shell. And I learned to take better care of my shell and to understand that there was a whole nother level of fitness I could be even in a larger body.
Right.
Um so yeah. I think it was then that I rediscovered the love of myself as when I became an educator at 23.
Wow.
And it's an
That's
ongoing
awesome.
thing. It's an ongoing process too.
Mm-hmm.
It's an ongoing process.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, my listeners know that this is an audio only podcast and I aggravate them every week because I'm like, I know y'all can't see her, but I can. And you are stunning, radiant, glowing, beautiful skin. You just look healthy, all
Mm,
around. Could you tell our listeners, like, is there a certain physical, spiritual kind of self care routine that you just stick to, like a non negotiable?
absolutely. Regardless of what's going on, y'all, I'm gonna drink my water.
Mm,
I am going to drink my water. And I'm bougie when it comes to water, y'all. Just don't give me that tap water. I'm gonna be honest. Do not give me just I mean, I'm gonna drink it if that's all we got, because I'm gonna drink my water. But if
yes.
I have a choice, I want some good old spring water. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And because of my country upbringing, if you got good well water, because that, because if you tap into the right little aquifer, I mean that's good spring water. But anyway,
Oh,
I love my water. I love my water. And for
okay.
me, I am drinking no less than 8 glasses of water a day. No less. Ideally,
Okay.
I'm getting at least that gallon and or more. Like I'm a water drinker. Um,
Okay.
yes. I would say also sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Get your rest. Depending on the season of life I'm in, it depends when was pulling on my energy, but I try to get no less than that 7 hours of sleep. That's just where I am in my season right now. Again, it can be more or less. Um, I eat as close to nature as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I am an omnivore. My husband of the last 7 years is a vegetarian. He's been a vegetarian for 30 years. We have a
Wow.
wonderful garden. Um, we try to eat from that garden. We don't try, we eat from that garden. So there's a joy in cooking. There's a magic in cooking. There's a healing in preparing food. I don't know if you guys remember some of the old people in your life growing up, but like for example, my grandfather to this day don't eat behind everybody. Like
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
There is an energy exchange that happens when you are touching and preparing and doing that magic in the kitchen. So when I'm not feeling it or if I'm not well, I don't cook because
Okay.
you're transferring that energy in that process. But I like to prepare whole foods.
Nice.
And so like that's the reality. I try to eat whole foods. When I go out, I like to go places where they're actually preparing the food, right?
Yeah.
And I exercise. I have workouts on everything from YouTube to TikTok. I like aqua aerobics. I'm usually the youngest little thing in there at 10 o'clock in the mornings,
Yep.
but I love it. I love it. Yeah. And as far as mental health, outside of rest, I journal.
Mm-hmm.
I write affirmations on my mirror and dry erase board.
Nice.
Sorry, not dry erase board, dry erase marker. Um, because like it, love it, leave it. We live in a culture that has a lot of low vibrational, low frequency thoughts that are very self critical because it forces you to be a consumer, right?
Yep.
So, it makes you feel like you got to have something, whether it's something for your body, something for your house, something, for your, all those things. So you might not even be conscious of some of the messages that you're absorbing on a day-to-day basis is by driving around and looking at stuff. Like there's constant messages. So
Yep.
I try to make sure that I'm affirming myself by setting the tone for myself.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I love that. And that kind of leads me to my next question. And I didn't even really think of this as a self-care question before, but what is your current relationship with social media? And
Mm,
how do you avoid falling into the vortex, but also enjoying the entertainment value of it?
got it. Y'all, I limit my social media because for me, just the kind of mind I have, and I can get lost and I get on rabbit holes very easily. So number one, I don't let my phone be the first thing in the morning that I do.
Mm,
No, 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 no. I get started with my day. I get my life together. I get some work done. I may call my mama before I even get online.
okay.
Um, how I support, and for me, I'm trying to get more into using social media for um sharing my story, marketing my businesses.
Right.
So I take the time to schedule stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
that comes out of my allotted time for social media. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Um, I'm very conscious about who I follow. Of course, I try to keep up with what my friends may have going on, but the reality is, I try to call y'all.
Yeah.
Saying like I try to have the
Yeah.
conversation, the text message, like have real life because social media is just that is social media is not real life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I don't I am very intent on not following things that don't bring me joy, that's not feeling my spirit. Um, yeah. And as soon as I see that algorithm getting off, because sometimes you're having a conversation, next thing you know, you're getting these ads for something that,
You talked
honey,
about.
yep. I am very conscious about going in and saying I don't want to see this. Like,
Right.
yeah, yeah. I'm
Okay.
intentional. I'm intentional about the social media. Does that answer the question? Like,
So I next want to ask you,
mm,
you are married, you've been married for almost a decade. Many professional women desire that and haven't found that or haven't been able to keep that. So what relationship, and I say to your younger self, but what relationship advice would you give to the listeners about,
wow.
being able to maintain a romantic relationship?
It's twofold. First, it's a daily I do.
Mm,
And by that, it is a daily, how do I serve this person? How do I
yeah.
take something off of their plate? How do I make their day better? How do I affirm them in their space? Um, it's marriage is really a service. Like some people say it's a
Mm,
ministry, but it is. It is like you said that we're going to do life together, but doing that life together is not just what benefits me. It's what benefits you and us, right?
mhm.
Um the second thing I would say to my younger self, so number 1, get very fortified in who you are and making sure that you're pouring from a full cup.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it says my cup overflow. Like you can only give from your overflow because if not, you're going to be in a deficit. And that's something I had to learn, to not try to um, put people in my life or allow space in my life because I felt like it was something that was going to fill a need.
Right. Right.
Because
It's not.
that's not. It's not. If anything, it's gonna feel real nice when that oxytocin's kicking off. But then after a while, that need is gonna be a gaping black hole. Okay. So yeah, don't do that to yourself, sis.
Yes.
And then the other thing is that, find company of people who are not only married, but who are happily, intentionally married. Because they have insight and perspective on things that you don't.
Right.
um, it is just like any other thing that we are intent on doing. You can learn from other people's path. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that your relationship is not your own and that your marriage is not unique, because it is. Like, it is a covenant between you two and God at the center. But having those people that you can not only watch them, but be transparent with them, and that who, again, are proponents of happy marriage, intentional
Yes.
marriage, their perspective and their advice and their speaking over you is going to be different from people who, may not be in that space, whether they're single or they're in relationships that are not healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
So this perception that I know I've had, and I've heard plenty of other people have, and I see on social media all the time, that marriage is me getting the princess treatment, and it's me getting spoiled, and I'm getting married for someone to love on me, is actually the exact opposite.
Child, and it's gonna leave you broke down, busted, disgusted. Okay. Um, which, I can't say that. I can say that for Regina, that losing my identity to allow someone power over my joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not the case. And even in some instances, I'll be honest, like, I had to pull back some of that, because when we first got married, it was still this idea in my head of what marriage is, based on what I grew up seeing, or what I thought I grew up seeing, what I
Right.
thought my current friends who are married were having. And no, 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 it's none of that. And to when you first get in there and that hard reality hits you, like, wait a minute, this ain't what I thought it was. You may find yourself deflecting to that person your discontents. But again, you have to call back in that responsibility of pursuing joy, which is really something that only you can get from your higher self and your relationship with your creator. Period. So again, maintaining that full cup so that when you come into this space in a daily I do, you're capable. You're capable.
I don't want to let you go. I know the listeners don't want to let you go, but if they want to hear more, they're going to have to find your chapter. They're going to have to find you on social media. They're going to have to come to one of your speaking events.
Yes.
Um, but I kind of started off saying, it really seems like you've got it all. But
Mm,
I will say that by your standards, you are living a successful life. Like, you are not on the struggle bus. You're not in a deficit in any measure that I could think of. But to get there, I know part of it was you may have had a dream of where you wanted to be. Maybe you had some goals about what you wanted to be. So I
mm.
wanted to see if you could give the listeners just a little taste into Regina's process for how you make something happen. Like, you've made a lot happen, and you've been blessed in a lot of ways also. But how do you make things happen in your life?
Wow. I have to leave this with saying that the person you see today does not exist without the people who mentored me, molded me, prayed for me. Um, I'm blessed.
Mm-hmm.
I I for as long as I can consciously say I've known myself, I've seen phenomenal examples of women in my community, in my circle. And so and each of them in different seasons, stages, whether very directly or through their example, poured into me this idea that you really can be anything you want to be. And the best thing for you to do is to be who God say you should be.
That's
Because
right.
you can be bad and live fast and and do all those things, but so I have to start with that. I had excellent examples. I had excellent examples who taught me the power of my mind, who taught me the power of discipline, who taught me the power of walking in humility, of, trying to live a good life. Have I always been perfect in that? Absolutely not. Am I perfect in it now? No, ma'am. But I strive. I strive to be uh, a woman who, when you see me, I make you proud.
Hmm.
Um, when you see me, I reflect something in you that gives you like a spark and makes your spine go up a little bit higher. Like that's what I aspire to be. And not because I want you to praise me, but I want you to see beyond me and see what
Mm.
we all are tapped into, right?
Yeah.
So with that being said, Catherine, it's a little scary because I don't have a defined path. And I had to let go of that.
Yeah.
Of course, when I was younger, it was like, you need to get you a good state job and a good government job. And that didn't work out for quite right for me. So now, and let's not just talk about career. Let's also talk about marriage. I did
Yeah.
not get married until I was 38 years old,
Yeah.
and had walked a life that I was actually quite like, because like I was going to be single, like, and it wasn't something
Yeah.
that I feel like I had to do, but I met someone and wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Um, so to get back to your question, how do I do what I do? Um, a lot of the times God will allow me to resonate in what I call Z.
Okay.
I get a vision, I have a desire, and I may be able to see a little bit or experience a little bit of it. But to keep me humble and to keep me dependent on the right timing, the right process, the right preparation and discipline on my part, I can only go from A to B.
There you go.
And so again, the same way I tell y'all that marriage is a daily I do, my relationship with myself and God is a daily seeking too. And again, I don't always get it right, but I try.
Hmm.
I strive for that. And I repent when I become aware when I'm not walking right or I miss the mark. And when that's necessary, I apologize. If I
Right.
have offended or harmed, when I can do that. That's just the reality. Um, in terms of being gifted and having the multiple lanes in which I can operate in excellence, I had to be very careful of the yes.
Mm.
Um, through some coaching, some therapy, some hard learned sleepless nights and lessons. If it's not a clear yes, it's a no.
There you go.
Because overcommitment is real, people pleasing is real, and just because you can doesn't mean you should. And for me, one of my litmus tests is what's going to be the legacy of this? Like,
Mm.
is this 10, 20, 50 years from now, like, what is the opportunity going to be?
Hmm.
Because again, I'm an educator. I'm always thinking about the unborn and what their world is going to look like, and what we're going to be handing them to continue to live in. So
So, Regina, you mentioned earlier the anthology and your chapter with mirrors. How can we get our hands on a copy of that?
absolutely. Please, please, please go to my website,
Okay.
www.drginabell.com. That's DRGINABELLE.com. And you go to the library and you will see this as a resource. Um, coming up, y'all, will be opportunities for you to actually sit down and go through some mirror sessions with me, where you can come in. Your book will be included in that ticket cost, along with, the facilitation and some resources for being able to really look at your mirrors and begin to walk in your enough. So, the first session is actually on October 18th in Georgetown, South Carolina. So if you want to join me there, please do come down. It's 12 to 2 on that day. If you would like to host a session with your circle or your study group, your prayer group, please reach out, drginavell.com. You can also find me on social at Dr. Gina Vell. That's on X as well as Instagram and TikTok. And if you just want to Google my government, you can do that too. It's Dr. Regina Wragg Ciphrah. That's Ciphrah, not a common name. Neither one of my surnames have been common. So
Right.
feel free to reach out to me. I'm a real person and I would love to connect.
Awesome. Well, this has been the final episode of season 1 of the Kat Myers Show, episode 14. You have not been let down. Matter of fact, I have over delivered to you by bringing you Dr. Regina Wragg Ciphrah. So happy to have her on. We will be back in a few months. Just listen out. But we are going to be closing out for tonight. Thank you so much for listening in. We're going to close out with the last question for Regina. And that is for our listeners who maybe, I'm going to change that. I'm going to change the last question. The last question I'm going to ask tonight is, when you are working towards your goals, when you're living your life, being the best wife you can be, best educator, best self, being in alignment with God's purpose, in that journey, when you experience self-doubt or when you experience fear, would you mind sharing what you do, say, or practice to empower yourself?
Wow, that's an excellent question. And it's actually the inspiration for what I've written in this anthology. I check my
Okay.
mirrors. I check my mirrors. Like,
Yes.
there are relationships that I have that I'm able to go to and be authentic and express what's going on, and they will help me root that out, call it out, and remind me who I am. I check that I go back to those affirmations. I go back to the scripture to say, like, who does God say that I am? Um, I'm checking in on, what's in my environment. Is there something here? Because I try to keep things that remind me. Like I keep like this bell that belonged to my grand aunt right here, and I look at that, and I'm telling you, like I keep little things like that. I have on my grandmother's bracelet, like just to remind me of the love and what's been poured over me and prayed into me, to remind myself. I keep those things like that. So yeah. Check your
Awesome.
mirrors.
Yes. And just like that, good morning, good night, whatever it is for you. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Kat Myers Show. And Regina, thank you for blessing the show, and thank you for blessing the mic.
Thank you for having me, sis. I love this. I love you. I'm so proud of your platform.
Thank you. Love you too.